Hey guys, Jack here, and it is our 50th episode. For those of you who have been with us from the beginning, and those of you who have joined us along the way, thank you so much for being a Just Hands listener. It really, really means a lot to us to see people listening to our work. Obviously, that makes it all worth it. We've had a really, really great time producing all these episodes, but without you guys, we wouldn't still be doing it. So thank you again. Also, it's not just our 50th episode, it's our first post-Greg Raymer event episode, and I'll report on the event. It was a blast. Thank you so much to all our participants. Thank you to Greg. Real quick, we apologize to everyone who tuned into the stream. There were a few issues. It was sort of cutting in and out. The good news is we've got the complete video without any issues up on YouTube. There's a link to it in the show notes. Be sure to check it out. It's about 4 hours of really awesome play and commentary. Definitely worth listening to. Final thing, we've got Will Kassouf on the podcast. We're not talking about the main event at all, but we are talking about a tournament at hand, and it's a little bit confusing how many big blinds Will has. At the beginning, he said he has 85. During the editing process, we cut out a part where we sort of realized that he actually had 75 big blinds. So at a certain point in the podcast, you'll hear us talking as if Will has 75 big blinds and not 85. And that is true. He has 75. All right. Enjoy the episode, and we will see you guys next week. Hello, Zach.
Hello, Jack.
Are you doing well on this beautiful Ohio day?
Doing great. Just made myself some mushroom tea. Couldn't be doing better.
Well, it's not just a beautiful Ohio day. Do you want to introduce our guest?
Today we have none other than Nine High Like a Boss. Some of you know him by his birth name, Will Kassouf, recent deep runner in the 2016 main event. How are you doing today, William?
I'm doing good, Zach. Yeah, thanks for having me on. Thank you, Jackson, as well.
Of course, we're glad to have you. You've had a lot of coverage in the media lately, but we just want to talk strategy. So we hear you've got a hand for us.
It was the Super Stack in London, which is a monthly tournament. The buy-in's £170 in total. Usually gets around 500 players and around £80,000 prize pool and £20,000 top prize. So it's pretty juicy for a £150 tournament. So yeah, that was the tournament then. It was last month when I got involved in a coup against this so-called villain on the table, a middle-aged, oldish guy who you'd probably look at and you think, oh, stereotypically that he'll be fairly tight, play fairly ABC. But he did anything but play ABC, and he tried to mix it up, which was really a challenge for me because he was on my direct left throughout the tournament. So I was out of position to him in pretty much every hand.
Have you played with him before this tournament?
I hadn't, no. It was the first time I played with him, but I noticed from previous hands he's played, and he was quite aggressive and loved to make some check raise moves himself. Loved to get involved a lot often than not. He was showing down, fairly marginal hands that he was getting involved in 3-bet pots. So it looked like he came to play. He wasn't there to just sit tight and fold, just fire one bullet. He was willing to re-enter if he had to. He was there to have a punt. He was there to get a stack. So that's one way of playing a tournament, I guess.
And how many hours at that point have you played with this guy?
It was fairly early on in the tournament, so probably just over an hour and a half.
So, in that hour and a half, you probably saw no more than like 35, 40 hands. About what percentage of those hands do you think this guy was involved in?
More than 50%, definitely. I'd say like 60 to 70. But the blinds were quite low at that time, so I think he wasn't the only one. I think a lot of people were involved because it's a 30k stack on a 30-minute clock, and the blinds start at 25.50. So you can imagine when it goes raise, 3-bet, whatever, it's going to go call because everyone wants to see a flop 7-8 suited, 9-10, Jack 10 suited. No one's folding to any kind of 3-bet when the blinds are so small. So that's what creates a lot of action. That's why I don't generally like myself to start tournaments right from the beginning. Because you can't really protect your hand, especially you get something like ace and kings. And there's a bet, and you do a big 3-bet, and it goes 5 ways to the flop. It's not going to play well out of position in a 5-way coup, just holding ace or kings, even though you have the strongest starting hand in hold'em. But it seems to be the way it goes because there's a lot of play earlier on. A lot of people have chips. A lot of people are deep. That's why people are getting involved in a lot more hands than they normally would in the latter stages or middle stage of a tournament.
So you're saying you don't like starting at like the very beginning because people just keep calling?
In a way, that's like one way of looking at it. Obviously, the plus side is you can accumulate chips quickly. People want to spew off more. People want to have a punt, willing to re-enter if they bust out, willing to gamble more. So there's that advantage. The disadvantage, obviously, like I just highlighted, if you get a big holding like ace or king early on in the first couple of levels, it's hard to protect your hand because no one folds. Even if you do a big 3-bet, it's going to be cool, and go five ways to the flop. It's hard to protect your hand. And how do you play the streets? With 4 other players to act behind you post flop, it is going to be quite tricky, and you can end up doing half your stack as well as doubling up or adding more than 50% to your stack. So it can go both ways. But I like to play enter tournaments generally up to level 3, level 4 of a tournament. I think the blinds are slightly higher. People respect raises more. People respect 3-bets more. People won't just be calling off with any 2 cards just to peel and see a flop and get lucky. So yeah, I think. I prefer it myself, coming in slightly later into a tournament. I'm more focused then. I'll play more disciplined, more tight myself. And I think you can protect your hand more and you get more respect for your raises after the first few levels compared to level 1.
Okay. So having seen this guy play a ton of hands in the early stages, when you get to this hand about an hour and a half in, do you remember what level it was? I guess it'd be level 3 or 4 at this point.
I came in late myself, so I got moved to that table. I think in level 3. So by the time I got involved in a big pot with him, was level 6, which was the final level before the end of late reg and re-entry.
Right. Okay. So at this point, do you think his range is significantly tighter pre-flop compared to what you saw in the first couple levels when the blinds were a lot lower compared to the stack size? Just to try and understand how this player is going to be playing. In this particular hand.
I don't think he cared whether we're level 1 or level 6. I think he seemed to be playing a lot of hands. I think other people, other players had picked up on it and had told me when he went to the bathroom that he'd been quite active and he had a stack and he was up and down like a yo-yo. He was getting involved in hand, winning at showdown, losing at showdown with so many marginal hands. So I had this kind of info on him and this kind of profile on him that he's this kind of loose aggressive kind of player who loved to mix out, wanted to have a gamble, wanted to have a punt and accumulate chips quickly in the tournament, wasn't afraid to get his chips in and re-enter if he had to. So he had that kind of loose, kind of crazy image, if you like, that he was there to play and there to fold.
All right, so let's set up the hand in question. Where were you seated? And so he was on your left?
I was in the big blind, this hand in question, yeah. Yeah, I had about 85 big blinds at the start of that hand, I think.
So
so this villain is under the gun.
Yeah.
All right. So what was the pre-flop action?
Okay, so the action's on him. Obviously, he's under the gun. He opens 3x under the gun, just under 3x under the gun, and there was 3 callers before me. I looked down and I saw 9-6 of clubs, 9 high like a boss, and I thought, right, I'm getting good odds here to peel, see a flop. So I called and made it up.
So what do you think his raising range looks like under the gun, given what you've observed so far?
Okay, so raising under the gun, yeah, normally you're perceived to be have a fairly tight range there, opening with any pocket pair, any kind of Broadway cards, and any big aces like ace king, ace queen, even ace jack suited, for example. He can open with any 2 there. He's shown to be a loose, aggressive player, but because he's raised under the gun, I think he'd get more respect from that he's opening under the gun, that he could this time have a big holding because he was playing so many hands, he could have anything. So people were scared to come over the top and 3-bet him, especially when they're in position, unless they had a very strong hold themselves. They were happy to just peel, see a flop in position and try and outplay him or outflop him in position and play the hands that way without bloating the pot too much. So I think when he raises there, he could have any 2, but I think a lot of people were willing to get involved in the hand.
Wait. So I'm hearing kind of 2 divergent things. You're saying he can have any 2 there, but he probably has aces, better aces to ace jack suited. About what percentage of hands do you think he's opening there? I don't think you would say he's opening literally 100% of hands. Where approximately do you think the line is?
Probably 60 to 70%.
So
right.
I would definitely be tempted to 3-bet here as a squeeze, just because. Yeah, I mean,
into 4 or 5 players, yeah. Possibly. But
if you think his range is 60 or 70% of hands and that he's not going to really get out of line in 4-bet bluffing you, then I think this is actually a pretty clear 3-bet if his range is really that wide.
Well, there's something Will said that actually makes me think 3-betting might not be as good as I would have thought, which is that you think that people who are calling him in position are playing a little bit scared and maybe have some stronger hands that they themselves might. So it's not like a typical
It's not
squeeze
like
spot
him
where
it's not the undergun player I have to worry about. I have to worry about other players flatting in position behind, who may have a stronger holding. And I didn't want to blow the pot, especially when I'm holding 9 high, even if I can represent I've got a big holder myself. Because even if he does hold under the gun, I'm sure one of the other players, in position, are going to call with any kind of pair, any kind of big ace themselves who have flatted him, disguising the strength of their hand. And I'm going to find it very tricky to play out of position to one of the better players who play more cautiously and quite more nitty, if you like.
Right. I mean, I would definitely only want to be 3-betting if I thought I was going to be taking the pot down pre-flop a significant percentage of the time.
I definitely didn't think I would take it down, even if I got the undergun raises to fold. I don't think I would have got one or two of the other players to fold their hands, because there was at least 3 callers, if not 4 callers before me.
Fair.
So it's fairly biggish bet under gun. So I think at least one of them were calling me in position as well. So if they were trying to target the guy that they had in position under the gun raising, even if I got them to fold, I would then be the new target that they would have in position as well to peel and seal flop and take a flop in position. So I didn't want to blow the pot with 9 high. At that point into 4 or 5 players.
So what was like your and the under the gun player stack size, and do you remember the stack sizes of the people in position approximately?
Yeah, I had about 85 big blinds at the start of the hand, I think.
Okay, so what was the flop?
And they're not antes at this stage in the tournament, right?
There were antes. No, there were antes.
Okay, so approximately like 15 big blinds in the pot, maybe 16, something like that?
It would be a little bit more, so 15 plus the small blind plus the antes, so...
Yeah. Something like that, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so like
18.
17.
Yeah.
17, 18. Yeah, okay.
So the flop was 8-7-4 with 2 hearts. So I flopped the up and down with 6-9.
Right.
And... I've checked the flop and the actions on the original raiser.
So do you on this type of board? Do you think you have a donking range?
I'm never taking the donk lead into 5 players. I want to see the action that comes before me effectively. Just see what the other players do in the hand. See the action that plays out. I'm probably never folding to 1 bet when I call with the hand like 6-9 and flop the up and down with 7-8 on the board. I'm never folding to 1 bet. So I'm always going to, majority of the time, like 90% plus of the time, I'm always going to be checking here, especially to the undergun raise. I'm never taking a donk lead, and then for him to raise it and to isolate, if you like, effectively represent an overpair. And then I'm playing a hand out of position. Then even if I flat call there, or if I make a move there, then I know I need to get lucky if he's going to snap me off representing a big pair, or even if I just peel and then see the turn, I'll blow to the pot unnecessarily. And then if I brick the turn and he shoves, what do I then do? So I don't want to put myself in that kind of position. So I'm never going to take the donk lead, especially into 5 players on that board with just 9 high.
Well, yeah. I meant more not like with this exact hand, but do you think like a range of hands that you might be donking here, or other specific hands that you would imagine that you would donk on this type of board? For
myself, I don't usually take the donk lead, not into 5 players. I know whether I'm talking about the specific hand with the 9 high or not. I don't usually take the donk lead when I'm out of position. I like to check my option just to see the action that goes round, to see who's doing what, who would bet who, and then if there's any re-raise, if there's any bet in a raise before me, then I can reassess. So I like to see the action of other players to see what other players are doing in the hand, what kind of hands they're representing, and their kind of ranges. So majority of the time I'm always going to be checking here.
Okay, so you check. And then what does the under the gun player do?
He bets like 2/3 of the pot.
Okay, so he bets like 12 bigs.
Yeah, he bets 2/3 of the pot. Everyone else folds, and it folds back to me.
All right, so under the gun bets out 2/3 pot. Everyone folds, and you're sitting, with just over 70 bigs. So, did you consider raising the flop here? What do you think? I know he's got a wide range pre-flop, but when he bets into 5 people on the flop, how do you think that's affecting his range? And do you think that it's going to be better to play this as a call or as a raise? Because I agree that we should never be folding here.
I think clearly on that flop, he's representing he has an overpair to the board. He's trying to shut it down. It's a scary board in terms of straight draws, flush draws there. So I think he's willing to make a big bet there. He'd take a stab at the pot just to take it down. He didn't want to make a small bet and people would just call him light with bottom pair or peel in position with 2 overcards. So I think he's making a big bet there to try and shut it down and take down the pot. So he wasn't expecting anyone to call. Obviously, with the hand that we know that he has, he's have to shut it down, obviously, and win the pot there and then without having to play down the streets. So hence why his bet there. But I thought I had to give him credit. I was out of position when it folds to me. I didn't want to blow the pot because I'm obviously just holding 9 high at the time. I wanted to get to see like the turn of the river. To either get there with my hand, so obviously beat him in the pot, or try and get to the river and maybe do a check call move from the flop and turn, and then take the donk lead and maybe set him in and represent so many more hands on the river to try and get him off 1 pair if he did have an overpair to the board. So that's what I was thinking, rather than check raising at any point on flop or turn, because if he did have a strong holding like an overpair to the board, then he's never folding, and then I've got eight outs and I have to get there.
So how often he's clearly representing the overpair when he bets out there.
Yeah.
How often do you think he actually has the overpair there? And do you think when he is bluffing, do you think he's cognizant of picking like better bluffs, like gut shots and straight draws and flush draws, or like what do you think his range outside of the actual overpairs he has there looks like?
Well, I'm thinking he's trying to shut it down and represent to the opponents that he's got an overpair. The fact that he's raised under the gun, he's trying to show strength there that he has an overpair. So he's probably trying to induce a call from someone who's hit the flop, someone who's got top pair, somebody who may have a flush draw or bottom pair and inside straight draw, that kind of thing, or middle pair or a gut shot or whatever. So yeah, he's trying to represent that he has an overpair and get some value from like inferior hands. But little do we know that he doesn't have an overpair later down the streets.
Well, so if he had a hand like, do you think he would be opening a hand like, let's say 8-10 suited, under the gun pre-flop?
He could do, yeah, it's possible.
Do you think he would be, leading that out on this flop, or would he decide that that's not strong enough for what is, because I agree that he is representing an overpair here, so he might decide not to bet out a hand like 8-10 suited because he's sort of over-representing what he has and is probably only going to get called by better. But do you think he's thinking on those lines, or do you think he would bet a hand like 8-10 suited on this flop?
I think 99% of the time he would definitely bet. If he's opened on the gun with 8-10 and he's hit top pair on the board, he's never folding his hand, he's never checking his hand. I think he's always going to be betting out unless he was short and he fancied check raising all in with top pair and just went for it. So no, I think if he's raised with a hand like 8-10, then he's definitely going to be c-betting that flop, especially when he's hit top pair.
Okay, and then so do you think if you raised him, do you think he would call with 8-10 here?
If he had 8-10?
Yeah, if he had a hand like 8-10. Or, sort of like a top pair with weak kicker type hand.
With a flush draw as well?
No, not necessarily with a flush draw. Let's say without a flush draw for now.
Well, even if he's got a backdoor flush draw with top pair, I don't think he's folding to one raise.
Okay, so that's definitely evidence against raising. What if he had? Do you think if he had a hand like Ace Queen or Ace Jack pre-flop, do you think he's bluffing into 4 other people on this flop?
I think he'd c-bet majority of flops anyway. Maybe he would play a bit more cagey if he did have a hand like Ace Queen on that kind of board, because that board hits a lot of other players' ranges in terms of their calling ranges pre-flop. So maybe he wouldn't bet out so much with Ace Queen in that spot out of position. But then again, he had raised under the gun, and so he's going to be repping an overpair all day long, regardless of his holding.
Okay, and then last question on that. I would assume if he was betting out with a hand like Ace Queen or Ace Jack, he would fold to a raise here.
Yeah,
like he's not crazy. Okay, so that kind of sets us on good footing to discuss what to do here.
Yeah. So from what I've heard, it sounds like we should be check raising really wide here with good bluffing candidates, because if he's opening 60-70% of hands under the gun and he's c-betting a large percentage of those hands, that means most of the hands he's betting out on this board, he's going to be folding to a raise, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think that's true. I guess
speaking, yeah.
To be honest, I'm not necessarily thinking of this player holding like 60 or 70% of hands, because that includes like some really awful hands. Like let's let's for the sake of discussion, like treat it more like he's opening like a very wide range, like wider than he should be, but maybe not.
No, I
60,
mean he was
70.
playing 60-70% of hands in general, not under the gun, not
Yeah, so
necessarily.
under the gun, let's say he's got more like 35% of hands, which is like insanely wide for under the gun. But
Okay.
Yeah, 60-70% was like his hands in general that he was playing,
I see. Okay.
opening. Yeah.
yeah, so this is a tough spot to me because I'm not used to like under the gun players like betting out like a huge range into 5 people, potentially holding like 35% of hands and not folding, a hand like 8-10 on this board to a check raise. So that already sort of puts me a little outside of my comfort zone. But I'll just point out sort of what I see as like the value of raising versus the value of calling. In terms of the value of calling, it's definitely lower variance. When we hit our hand, we will get paid. We can still apply pressure on later streets if we think he's going to be betting the turn at a high frequency as well. When we do miss, because we have enough behind that we can make a realistic turn check raise that has good fold equity. Mm-hmm. I would think that raising would be slam dunk here if he was going to fold hands like top pair. But if he's not, then that makes up a large part of his range. And if he's not folding a hand like that, then he probably also has hands like 9-10 suited for, a better open-ended straight. And even though like we don't want those hands to call because, even though we might be able to get them to fold on the turn, it's going to be tough to fire a turn barrel on a blink, and we don't have that hand at showtime. So I think it's pretty close. I wouldn't blame you for doing either. I'll be interested. So will we normally go back and actually look at the hand using software and try and improve on our intuition and make at least some set of assumptions that leads us to a correct answer. So we'll have an answer, but I think at this point, a call or a raise both seem reasonable to me given what we've said about this villain.
Yeah, I mean, Jack, I know you're looking at the software this week. My intuition says that, even with a range much smaller than what I was thinking of before, like 35% of hands, if he's folding, if he's betting out the majority of his hands for this sizing and folding all of his hands that aren't, draws and top pair plus, I still feel like this is a pretty slam dunk spot to be check raising wide as a bluff. Just because, 9-6 has such little showdown value, it's going to be hard to play out of position. And you were saying like if we do hit, we're going to get paid, but because his range is so wide and everyone else folded, like I don't think we're necessarily going to get paid. I think most of the time when he bets out here, he has bluffs because he's betting out most of his hands. So,
well, when I say we're going to get paid, well, if he's betting out mostly bluffs here, then I think we will get paid because on later streets, the player who's bluffing extremely wide on the flop is likely going to be bluffing extremely wide on the turn in the river, especially if he was betting extremely wide into 5-way and now we're heads up and we've showed, not a ton of strength by just calling in the big blind and then calling on this flop. I think it is likely that he's going to be barreling.
Especially overcards to the board and he's then connected with the board on the turn or river, then he's definitely going to be stacking off or at least barreling again on turn or river. And we have the option being first to act on turn or river if the board bricks out and it all comes low cards and you put them on a hand like ace high, then you can effectively turn your hand into bluff, clearly a bluff, and then try and put the pressure on him by making a big bet on the river, play a stop and go, and then obviously get him to fold a hand like ace high.
Yeah, that's another thing about calling against a player like this is that when he checks back the turn, like we can be pretty sure that he's got absolutely nothing. Yeah. And so then we've got a really great river bluff if we do call and that happens.
Exactly. Yeah. So you got control there and you stay in control and you can then play the stop and go on the river if you like, and try and take the hand away from him rather than check raising there, getting called and then having to shove. And then if you do get called, then you need to you need to get there.
Okay, so we'll come up with a more conclusive answer in the in-depth analysis that we'll do later. But what did you do here? It sounds like you were leaning towards a call.
When he bet the flop?
Yeah.
Yeah, when he bet the flop, action folded to me, and I just called. I just called his bet on the flop.
Okay, what was the turn?
Wait, so just to recap for the listeners, the board is 8-7-4 with 2 hearts, and he bet out like 12 big blinds, well called, so the pot's 42 big blinds with like about 60 behind.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And
so what was the turn?
So I called turn was the 10 of diamonds. And bringing
nice.
two hearts and 2 diamonds on the board. So I got the second nuts. Jack 9 would be the effective nuts here, or the absolute coconuts, as I like to say. So I've got the monkey nuts on the turn. So yeah, turn the straight, and I decided to check to him again.
Yeah, I mean, I think we definitely have to be checking here since his range is so wide, and we want him to take another stab at this pot.
Do you think this is the type of card that he continues barreling with a lot of his range? Like, if let's say he had a hand like a heart draw.
Yeah, if he has got something like Ace King, Ace Queen of Hearts, or Ace King, Ace Queen of Diamonds, and he's now picked up 2 overcards with the nut flush draw, he's 100% barreling here to try and shut it down without having to get to the river.
Yeah, this is sort of a somewhat neutral card, maybe slightly better for Will's range. I think like most players, it would be much better for Will's range, but against this player, I think it's a bit more neutral, considering the frequency with which he is betting the flop.
And going into his mind, if he's thinking I'm calling him with top pair here, he's going to try and put in a big bet to try and get me off top pair now that an overcard has come on the board, even though it's just a 10.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. I think a more logical player under the gun would probably realize that a lot of your top pair hands just turn 2 pair. Or not a lot, but enough. Plus, you would have some 9-10 that would turn top pair.
An open ender or like 7.
Plus, you would likely have Jack 9, 6 9. But I don't think this player is thinking like that based on everything we've said. So yeah, I expect him to barrel a lot. So I definitely, I think checking here is clearly the right decision. So did he bet?
Side check, and then he bets just over half pot.
Okay, so he bets like 25 bigs. And we've got like 60 behind.
Yeah.
So this is, it's tough. You've only played with the guy for hour and a half, but it really just depends on what his river bluffing frequencies are. Like I think it against a lot of players, when they double barrel here, they're likely having a hand that has like significant equity in the form of a draw or in the form of like, an overpair plus that will make sense to check raise for value. But if this player is bluffing a ton, which we think he is, and going to bet almost all of his brick draws on the river, well then we kind of want, it's higher variance, but we kind of want to call and just, play almost our entire range against him as a bluff catcher.
Sure, but I think if I just flat call there and I'm out of position and there's so many more scare cards to come on the river, one card to a straight, which effectively just kills my action, or it comes another heart on the river or another diamond on the river, which could kill the action if he has got an overpair and got a big hand like that. So I want to get paid. I want to get my chips in good, definitely here on the turn, on that kind of board, knowing what I'm 99% sure that I'm ahead, and trying to get him to call with a hand like an overpair or top pair or even a set or some kind of combo 2 pair that got there. So obviously, the fact that he bet the flop and bet the turn, he's shown strength in his hand that he does have a good holding. So I want to get my chips in good there with knowing I've got the best hand there with 2 flush draws, 2 straight draws there. I thought I'd just get it in once he's bet the turn. I think it was a no-brainer for me just to get it in to get maximum value for my hand without trying to play it 2 kg. I think if we're a lot deeper, I think the hand's played differently. I might flat call and then opt to either check raise or take the donk lead on the river. But with the stack sizes then, at that point, once he bets the turn, I think I just have to get it in there. Just jam it in there and give him the sweet string and try and get him to call with whatever hand he has, because I know I'm 99% sure I've got him beat.
Do you think he's calling with flush draws here? I have to think for a second if he's got the right price. So if you shift for 60, then he's calling 40 to win like 120. So not quite.
Like I said, he's bet 25 bigs and I shift for 60. He's not folding for 35 more.
Okay.
Well,
so I guess
he's not folding like Ace King of Diamonds, Ace Queen of Diamonds, Ace Queen of Hearts. He's never folding 2 overs and a flush draw. He could put me on like top pair and a straight draw himself. So he'll probably think he's behind, obviously, but he's probably want to gamble in that spot with 2 overcards and a flush draw. Especially he's led the flop and led the turn. Once I've check raised all in, then I don't think he's folding at all with a hand like Ace King of Hearts or Ace King of Diamonds.
So I guess the main part of the range here that we're sort of concerning ourselves with is we're sort of balancing 3 things. There's part of his range that might barrel the river, but would fold to a raise here. And we're saying that doesn't include like very strong draws.
Like
so
overpairs.
So we're very
hands, yeah.
And then there's a portion of his range, that would get there on certain river cards. And there's also a portion of his range that would call a check raise here, but would check back on the river. And that might include like 1 pair hands, like a hand like these sort of weird hands like 10-9 that turned a pair here and decides to bet and then checks back the river. I mean, that seems likely to me. So it's sort of a balancing act. I think in terms of like hand protection and taking like a lower variance line that could also be the highest EV line, like shipping makes sense to me. But I think it's just going to be another spot where we're going to have to kind of look more closely at this range to come out, with the truth, since he's playing so many hands here that it's kind of hard to estimate, as it would be in other, spots where we're check raising the turn and expecting him to call and fold with some of his range.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is just about bluffing frequency. So, like, with that 35%, assumption we're starting with of his under the gun raising range, and then that he's c-betting most of that range, I think if he continues to bet most of the range he got with on the turn, this is a slam dunk call. But
you have to also assume he's betting the river.
That's what I was going to say, yeah. If he continues that kind of thing of, like, betting most of his hands on each subsequent street, then I think this is a slam dunk call. I think against most players, this is a slam dunk check raise. So it's really just about, the assumptions we're making about a players like this bluffing frequencies. And, I don't really play in tournaments to the degree that you do, Will, but generally from cash, like even when you're playing with kind of, looser, crazier opponents, I find that their bluffing frequencies generally go down, not like proportionally a little bit on each street, but like a lot, Like some players are willing to be super loose pre and then like somewhat loose on the flop, but there's very few players that just kind of go crazy on each subsequent street. And I think that kind of lends itself more towards, raising it in here to get value from a range of, high equity draws and made hands.
Definitely. I think when he raised the turn in this spot, he was showing a lot more strength then than he was on the flop. If you were thinking, he's just going to be c-betting any flop, you could see that from his range and a number of hands he's opening with and his betting frequency, etc. But when he bets the turn and we're heads up and he's in position to me, when he has the option to check and he still bets that turn, he's showing strength there that he does have a good holding, that he has better than top pair, if you like, from that and the way the betting action has gone, pre-flop, post-flop, on the flop and turn. So when he makes a big bet there and he bets half pot and he's bet effectively 25 bigs, as Jackson has said, and I've got 60 behind, I think there's little point there in just flat calling. There's so many more scare cards to come on the river for me to take the donk lead to get value from my hand. There's so many like 1 card straightening cards that can get there. There's so many like flush draws that can get there. There's so many bad cards that can get there. If he has got a hand like jacks, queens, kings, could be like even if he has got jacks or queens, for example, that he's repping, or big overpair, comes an ace or a king, could be an action killer. There's so many action killer cards that can come on the river if I just flat call and try and play a stop and go, or even like to take the donk lead or check to him. I think if he has got a overpair to the board, I don't think he's going to be barreling river to turn his hand into a bluff if he thinks he has showdown. So hence the reason why when he makes that bet on the turn, I think he's either improved on the turn with a bigger draw like ace king, ace queen of diamonds, some hand like that, or hearts, 2 overs and a flush draw, or ace jack suited with a 2 overs and a gutter ball and a flush draw now when the 10 comes on the turn. So there's so many kind of like combo draws there that I've got to protect my hand against with, and also get maximum value from my hand at that point when I'm 99% sure I've got the best hand with the turn straight. So hence why I went for the check raise there for value. The fact that he bet turn I thought was strong from him. that he's representing now, that he has a strong hand. Even though on the flop he could have been c-betting light, but he now has a strong holding once he bets a turn. I thought now would be the great time to check raise to get maximum value from the hand in this instance. So that's why I opted to go for the check raise.
Okay. When you did check raise, did you just, let him to his own thoughts and, quietly await his decision?
Definitely not. I had to go there and said, this is where my speech play comes in when I want to get paid. I mean, the whole point of speech play is like to get your opponent to call with the worst hand and to fold the best hand. So in this instance, I was 99% sure I had the best hand here. So I'm trying to convince him I'm like semi-bluffing here with some kind of combo draw with a pair and a straight draw, pair, straight draw, flush draw, for example, that I'm willing to take down, because a lot of players would play it that way. If they did have some big combo draw like pair, straight draw, flush draw, they would check raise to either try and shut it down there and then, or if not, they've got a whole bunch of outs if they get called by a one pair hand. So yeah, I wanted to give him that impression that I was check raising with that kind of combo hand, and to let him call me light, whether he had top pair, two pair, or whatever. I was confident my straight was good at this point, because I got the second nuts effectively. So I'm trying to give him the speech here effectively to call, because he was slumped back in his chair and he's thinking, I'm going to about. He never snap called. Obviously, he seemed like he had a decision. He wasn't Hollywooding like he was thinking about folding, or he had absolute air like ace high. He genuinely looked like he had a decision. So I'm now going to do my best and my utmost to try and convince him that he has the best hand, to get him to call off his whole stack pretty much against the straight that I had with whatever holding he had. So I tried to engage in conversation with him to find out the strength of his holding and try and convince him that he has the best hand.
So what are the types of things you're doing when you're, obviously, you don't want to give too much away in case any of your future opponents listen to this podcast, but like, for me, I didn't watch that much of the World Series of Poker main event coverage this year, but I noticed that in the two big hands that you were involved in, one as a bluff and one where you were goading someone for value, I, at least from just like a cursory glance, I didn't notice much difference between them. So like, what are the different types of things you're thinking about, or that you're comfortable sharing that you're doing when you're trying to induce a call versus induce a bluff, and how much does that change for each player?
Yeah, I'll try to mix it up. I try not to do the same thing when I'm trying to get them to call, or say the same thing when I'm trying to get them to fold, because I think the better players will pick up on that and use that information against me, and that could counteract against me and not be so beneficial in the long term against the better players, because they'll know exactly what I'm saying in certain situations. So I've got to mix it up in certain spots, but I think generally playing against recreational players, I find it fairly straightforward for me to convince them to call when they got the worst of it, and convince them to fold when they got the best hand. So just something that's come naturally to me over the years, something I've always practiced and been confident about. Even giving away the strength of my hand, I might be talking a lot and effectively telling my opponent what I have, but at the same time, I'm getting valuable information from my opponents and how they're reacting from their body language and how they respond to my line of questioning as to the strength of their holding, and then I can manipulate them to call or to fold depending on the strength of their hand and my hand and the board texture at the time. So in this instance, against this gentleman who's obviously barreled the flop and turn and went up check raise, and he's slumped back in his chair, the decision's on him. But once we're heads up in a pot, you can say what you like, even about the strength of your hand. So now I'm trying to convince him to call, because he's umming and ahhing. He doesn't know what to do. He's not sure if he's got the best hand or not. At this moment in time, I don't know what he has. I'm putting him on an overpair from the way he's played this hand through. I think if he has a set, then he 100% would have snap called by now. I think if he's got any two pair, I think he's got a call as well from the way I played this hand to check raise the turn, just because like I'm on some pair combo straight draw flush draw kind of hand. So I think he would have called by now. So I think I've put him down to a one pair hand, whether it's an overpair or top pair. So I've just got to try to get the confirmation of this from him, try and ascertain what kind of holding he has, and then give him the necessary speech to effectively call me light and convince him he has the best hand, and I'm on some kind of combo draw myself, and I'm willing to gamble because it's level 6 of the tournament and we can still late reg and re-enter the tournament. So I'm willing to gamble at this point. So that's why I'm trying to give him that kind of like impression that I've got a weaker holding than I actually have, to convince him he has the best hand to call off light. So that was the aim of the whole speech at that point.
So did he tell you what he had?
Yeah, did it work out?
it definitely worked out. Yeah, I said, oh, well, what do you have? I said, I think I got the best hand here. I think, if you had the best hand, you'd have called by now. So I must have you beat. I deserve to win this spot from this speech alone. Yeah, no need to be a hero. So I'm doing the reverse psychology kind of thing. No need to be a hero. Let me win this hand. I'm sure I got the best hand and everything. And he opened up and says, I put you on a big draw. I said, well, if you put me in a draw, you must have the best hand then, right? If you got the best hand, you got a call. He goes, I don't know if I want to gamble. I said, what depends what you have. Tell me what you got, and I'll tell you what you need to call. And he goes, well, I got a big hand here. I think I've got a decision. I think, I improve on the turn. I said, well, I improve on the turn as well. So I said, it's absolute cooler then, isn't it? Yeah, so if both improve on the turn, it's a cooler. But if you think you got the best hand, you got a call. I think if you had the best hand, you would have called by now. You no need to be a hero. Get my chips in good. But tell me what you got, and I'll tell if I want you to call. Depending on what you have is whether I want you to call or not. So obviously I know I've got the best hand at this point when he's tanking. So I know 100% I've got him crushed. But I'm giving him the speech and to let him know, well, it depends on what your hand is. You may have me beat. Well, tell me what you got, and I'll tell if I want you to go, depending on the strength of your hand. And he said, he's hit the turn. He's got top pair on the turn. I said, what? You hit the turn. You raise pre-flop, bet the flop and the turn. Now you hit the 10. I said, what's your kicker? He goes, I've got a good kicker with it. I said, what, king 10? Something like that, queen 10? He goes, yeah, king 10. I said, big hand. Well, if you've got king 10, well, you can't pass that, can you? So a big hand. I'm willing to gamble anyway. I've got a big hand myself. I'm willing to gamble. You might be ahead if you got king 10. Then we've got to go for it. There's only 10 minutes left of late reg and re-entry. We could both re-enter. But one of us can re-enter anyway. One of us will have a big stack. So I'm willing to gamble with this hand. If you call, then I've got outs. If you fold, I could take the pot down now. Effectively, so I'm explaining him exactly a statement of fact, if you like, the exact situation, even though I'm 99% sure I'm going to take the pot down regardless of what happens. But obviously, I don't want to let him know that. So I'm trying to convince him that I've got a weaker hand than I have. I say I'm willing to gamble with this hand to let him know that I've got some kind of pair, straight draw, flush draw, combo draw, and that his top pair king kicker is good. But once he's bet the flop and turn, he's like saying, no, I think I've got the right price. And I said, let's gamble. Let's gamble. I'm all in. You might be ahead. Let's gamble. And eventually he calls, and I'll show the 6-9 for the straight. And he goes, he didn't want to show his hand. He felt embarrassed to show his hand. He turns over king 10 suited. And that's it. And then he's drawing dead. And I'm on the hand, and he shook my hand. He said, you confused me there. I can't believe it. I shouldn't have called there, but you confused me and you got me to call. So well done. He shook my hand and walked off.
That's fun.
So let's say you had like ace-6 of hearts there. How would you differ what you say to this guy?
If I check raise all in with a gut shot and lower end gut shot and a nut flush draw and overcard?
Mm-hmm. Where you want him to fold?
What would I have said if I check raise the turn with that kind of hand?
Yeah. What are the
and he tells you he has king 10.
Yeah.
Then I'm definitely going to be convincing him that I have him beat. And that 100% I want him to call. If you got one pair, you're drawing dead. I come with a lot more stronger statements to convince him to call, convince him to fold a lot more of the time than I would convince him to call. Obviously, I've got outs if he does call, but obviously I'd rather shut it down then. And when I've just got ace high for pretty much my tournament life, I'd be convincing him to fold, making much stronger statements that I got one pair beat, kind of thing. 100% I want him in. You're drawing dead if you got one pair. Those kind of things. To make him look silly that if he does call with one pair, he's drawing dead. So I don't want to mug you off. Listen, you're a nice guy. I'm keeping it friendly. You fold and show, I'll show. One pair is no good. If you go broke, 100%. If you call off here one pair, I thought you were stronger than that. I thought you had two pair. If you got one pair, you're drawing dead. I've got a set. I want you to call. So that kind of thing. So I'll say that, put that kind of thought process in his mind. I don't want to mug him off. The whole table's heard what I had to say. He's going to see the hand anyway. If he fold and shows, I'll show, kind of thing. Keeping it friendly. He's my neighbor. He's a nice guy. You don't need to call up with one pair. Just fold your hand. You're going to see it anyway. You fold your one pair, I'll show you a set. That kind of thing. So you convince him and get into his mind and manipulate him that he's going to see it anyway. He doesn't need to hero call here because you convince him now that you're going to show him a set. So if he folds and shows his one pair, you're going to show him a set. So he doesn't need to call. He's going to fold there, and then obviously I'll show him the ace high, which will obviously create more action in future pots that we play together on the table. So yeah, that's what I
for
did.
Sure.
And speaking hypothetically, just generally along the lines, that's how I would have given him the speech, like differently to when I'm holding 9-6 and had this straight on the turn.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, Will, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. This was an interesting hand discussion. I don't think we've ever gone this in depth in terms of speech play. If people want to learn how to, incorporate this goading and what some haters might call taunting into their own game, where can they find out tips and tricks and just to generally know what's going on in your life?
Yeah, you can follow me on social media. On Facebook, it's William Kassouf. On Twitter, I'm at William Kassouf. I've got my own website recently, willkassouf.com. So check that out for all latest videos and podcasts and all my biography, everything about me. All the videos and everything and links are all up there. So check me out on Facebook, Twitter, and my own website, willkassouf.com.